We would like to welcome Salvatore Formica, who is with Biz Brokerage Hub. His background as restaurant owner and chef gives him a unique viewpoint on how to buy and sell restaurant businesses. Why don't you start by telling us how you got into the restaurant business and some of the lessons learned that can help new buyers and owners getting ready to sell their business?
Okay, so basically, my career in the restaurant began pretty much the day I retired from the police department. But it didn't start there. It wasn't something that I just woke up one day and I said, "Hey, I want to be a chef after I'm a cop." 2010, I retired from the police department, and that was the day that I took the keys to the restaurant that was later known as Sal's Restaurante. Previous to that, I had two partners. So I originally started out as DiMaggio's Trattoria. And the partnership split up about 12 months after, and that's when it became Sal's Restaurante. And pretty much from that point forward, I was able to put all my spins on what I wanted to do as a chef owner of a restaurant. So I never had any kind of formal training in the kitchen. I like to always joke and say I went to the School of Hard Knocks, which was my mother and my grandmother. My mother was from Naples, and my grandmother was from Sicily. So I got to experience two different cuisines growing up as a kid in an Italian household, first generation here. And that's kind of my backdrop on how I became a chef. As far as the restaurant itself goes, everything is a trial and error. You learn a lot, and I'm a lot smarter today than I was 14, 15 years ago when I started out the venture in the restaurant business. And I'm hoping that going forward, I can help a lot of people out in my new profession, which is working with Ziggy Marzalak and Biz Brokerage Hub on the selling side and helping people purchase maybe their first restaurant, second, third, whatever it may be. And more focused, I think, on the people who are a little more green in the restaurant business. As someone who's been through it myself, and I certainly was very green to the restaurant business as an owner myself, because it was my first restaurant that I owned. About, I would say, 5, 6 years after the fact, I opened the second restaurant also with another partner. So I do have a lot of experience in the restaurant business, and I've made a lot of the mistakes, a lot of the corrections, and ultimately it made me a successful business owner.
What would you say are some of the key issues with someone looking to either sell their restaurant or buy their restaurant? Where do you get started with someone?
Well, I mean, it's two different ends of the sphere, to be honest with you. So, for the folks that are looking to buy a restaurant, right, there's two different formulas. There's the formula for the person who's already successful and maybe has their own blueprint or their own version of what they believe success is in a restaurant business, right? So, it's hard to argue with someone who's already had a restaurant or two or three restaurants. So, that's one formula we use for those folks. But on the green side, the folks who had that same dream that I had of going into the restaurant business, there's a lot of stuff that goes into it, and sometimes you can't allow your emotions to take control of your wallet. So how does it all start? Well, first and foremost, when you're looking to jump into the restaurant business for the first time, there are certain things that you should be doing prior to even going to look at your first restaurant. And what are those things? First and foremost is, do you have the financial ability to do this? If you're looking to be reliant on the sellers holding big notes, and then you have rent on top of it, and maybe a couple of slow weeks or slow months, if you're doing that right off the bat, I would tell you, you're setting yourself up for disaster. Okay. It's very important. The general rule, I would say, is that in addition to you being able to purchase the restaurant with cash, or check, cash, whatever, where no one else is holding a note and it's yourself, in addition to that, you should always have anywhere between 6 and 12 months as backup of money to pay your rent and possibly get you through those lean months. So hypothetically, let's say you bought a $250,000 restaurant and the rent is $5,000 a month, just for conversation purposes.
Right.
So you would need the actual 250, right? So this way you're not holding a note. and you're not responsible or having that chokehold on a monthly basis of saying, hey, I have to make a payment. But in addition to that, you should have anywhere between $30,000 and $60,000 put aside in the bank that's basically earmarked to get you through the first 12 months, which is when most restaurants fail. Most restaurants, within the first 12 months, you either have a possibility of making it or you fail. That's kind of the ratio. The first 12 months is beyond crucial because the way you open that door is the way people perceive you. If you're not ready to open, which is the next part for someone who's green, is once you have the financial ability, excuse me, once you have the financial ability and that the finance part is covered, then you should have other things in place, right? So what are those things? Number one, what is your concept going to be? How big of a space do you want to be? You know, are you going to be strictly takeout? Are you going to be takeout and dine-in? There's a lot of factors. And it can't be that you guess on the fly based on what you see, because then you're all over the map. You have to be very specific in your search when you're looking for something. So let's say someone's never purchased a restaurant before and they say, okay, you know what? My budget is $300,000. Okay, so you have that. There's no sense in looking at restaurants, let's say, for more than 400,000, because you do have the possibility of negotiating down on a sale, right? Some people will stick to their guns on a seller, and we'll go through that in a minute. But as a buyer, you know, if your budget's 300, you shouldn't even bother looking at restaurants that are over 400, because there's no way a restaurateur that's established, unless, you know, the restaurant is not making money and the whole thing is, you know, a scam, so to speak. There's no reason for you to look at a restaurant over 400,000, because all you're going to do is fall in love with something that you can't have, right? So I would tell folks that to stay within their means. So if you figured 300,000 is a number, you look anywhere up to maybe 375, 400, with the hopes that the person will come down. There's no guarantees the person will come down, but I've seen enough of that and also experienced it in my own personal 2 sales of my restaurants where I did come down for the right buyer. So you have that factor. The next factor is, you know, now that you've decided, okay, that's my budget, you're going to say to yourself, well, am I going to be a sit down? Am I going to be strictly takeout? A combination of both. If you're going to be a sit down, you should also come up with a number of seats you want in your establishment. So I always tell people, I know everyone thinks big is better, but when you first start out, big is not always better. It's better to create we're always busy and people have to come back on a different day for a reservation than for you to buy a place that has 100, 150 seats. And maybe you're drawing 50 people a night, but people are looking around and saying, wow, this place has 100 empty seats. So you have to be very careful in what message you want to send to people. The one thing I learned in this business is that people always want to go to a place that is hard to get into. And it's not even necessarily about the food. It's more about, hey, you know what? Why is this place always so busy? What's the allure here? You know, so that's another factor. If I'm going to have seats, how many seats do I want to have? Then, if you're going to go into the restaurant business, I tell everyone, one of the biggest money makers, but can also be the biggest loser in your restaurant, is a bar. If you have a good sized bar with maybe, I don't know, 10 seats, somewhere in that neighborhood, nothing grand, but 10 seats, those seats have the ability to make or break you as a restaurant. Liquor sales are, you know, almost a guarantee on a nightly basis. You know, you have people that may only come in for a salad, or if you're a pizza place, maybe they order an individual pizzetta, a pie, or something like that. But liquor is one of those things that everyone always seems to be a part of, whether it's a bottle of wine or a couple of cocktails or an after dinner drink. So the bar is very important to the restaurant if you're going to go for a sit down. Some restaurants have chosen to not want to go the bar route, but have a service bar, which basically means that people can't sit there, but you have a full blown bar. They can order bottles of wine, they can order cocktails. I've never been a fan of that because, you know, to quote John Tapper, who's very big in the industry with the bar business, each bar stool is worth about $10,000 a year if you know what you're doing. So 10 stools based on his formula, and he's a very successful guy, a lot more successful than I ever was, you know, that's worth $100,000 a year with 10 stools. So take that with a grain of salt, but that's kind of like the industry standard. So I would say that's another thing you have to determine. Do you want a bar? You don't want a bar. Then the other thing is, how big of an overhead do you want? Well, we've already decided that, okay, in this hypothetical situation, we're going to use $300,000 as a number. Maybe we want, I don't know, 70 seats in a restaurant. Well, you got to make sure that whatever you do, okay, that your rent can know the highest end should be a 10% threshold. So what does that mean? Well, for argument's sake, let's say that restaurant that you buy for 300,000 with 70 seats, if the rent is $7,000 a month, okay, you multiply that times 12, that's $84,000 in rent. So based on a 10% threshold, that means that your restaurant has to, at a minimum, gross $840,000 a year, or else you're overpaying on your rent. We haven't even gotten into the food cost end. We're just talking about, to succeed based on rent, because your other fixed expenses are going to be there. Electric, gas, heating, air conditioning, water, cable bills. All of those things are going to be fixed expenses that go with any restaurant, right? Just depending on usage is what your bill is going to be. But the rent is a very integral part of any buyer. First time, experienced, but the experienced guys know this. It's more leaning towards the people who are green in the industry. A lot of people don't understand. A place can be beautiful looking, the whole 9 yards, and you say, hey, I don't mind paying $10,000 in rent. I believe in myself. Well, that's great, but keep in mind that you better believe in yourself to the tune of $1.2 million a year in gross revenue based on $10,000. And a lot of people don't do that math, and they find out very quickly that they may be making money, but what's preventing them from the difference between going out of business and staying in business is that they're overpaying in rent. Unfortunately, today, in today's environment, which is very strange because post-COVID, you would think that the landlords would be a little more user-friendly with all the people that went out of business, but they're certainly not. So a lot of these people, I'm experiencing it heavily now as a broker myself, that I've lost a lot of deals because of the landlord, to be honest with you, is they're not willing to budge on price. They're taking the tack that they would rather see, hey, you know what, this person lasts a year, who cares? I collected a year rent. Now I have a restaurant that, maybe this person pumped 100,000 to it, and they continue to sell it for key money, and they make their money that way. So again, to take the landlord out of it, okay, you must, as a first-time buyer, recognize what's your ceiling here. What do you think that you can produce based on the menu you write up? How much money and how many customers are you going to have to see on a weekly basis to get to that number? So again, 10% max threshold for rent is what you should look at based on what your expectation is in a gross. Some people may say, well, how am I supposed to know, Sal? How would I know what my gross is going to be? And I always tell people this. If you're looking at a location that's already open, they have a track record. That track record means nothing other than it's a small guide for you to go by. So if you buy a failing business, let's say, a lot of people, the thing that I'm hearing in the business right now is a lot of people, which I laugh, but they're like, oh, I don't want to buy, I don't want to buy an expensive place, a place that's making a lot of money because, how do I know I'm going to have their customers? And that part of it's right. But if you're looking at a restaurant that's grossing $2 million, you're going to pay. Those people aren't giving you that business. It's up to you to maintain it. As an example, the restaurant I sold, my last one that I sold, was doing very well. And when I sold it to the gentleman that has it now, he's doing maybe 40% of the sales. Nothing changed. My head chef is still in the kitchen. Do you know what changed? What changed is the ownership. How are you running it? What changes did you make in the location? Are you family friendly like I was? When the customers walked into my restaurant, they knew my name, my wife's name, my children's name. They watched them grow up. These are factors that you have to take into account when you're buying an established place. So that's one end of it, a successful restaurant. The other end of it is I have customers that call me up and say, hey, Sal, I want a place that looks nice, but it's failing. Well, the first thing I'll tell you is those are diamonds in the rough. Unless it's something that's freshly built that goes out of business within its first 12 months. And usually when you're looking at those properties, The people that failed are people that have heavy money backing them, right? They're backed by money. So the reason that they're able to do a $500,000 build out is because they've sold themselves to an investor who's the money person. Now, all of a sudden, it doesn't work. So what happens? The investor is going to try and recoup as much of the money that they put into the location themselves. So they may say, hey, you know what? We're going to cut our losses. We're going to sell this place that cost us $500,000 a year ago for $250,000. Okay, so that's great. So I find this restaurant for you. You buy it. You're excited. But here's the problem. People like that invest don't invest in someone who's got a dream like I had to open a business. Okay, they invest in real chefs, real general managers, people that they can count on who have experience in a restaurant business. And I would caution people and tell you that if they can't make it, there's a good chance you're not going to make it at that location either. Okay, because usually people that build restaurants like that look really, really pretty and high end, usually the rent reflects the same thing of how pretty the restaurant looks, which means you're going to be paying heavy rent. And if they can't make it, you're certainly not going to make it. That's just my belief. I've seen plenty of restaurants open up, close, resell, and it's just a carousel of people with a dream losing their money. So I would say that, to people who are buying the first time, that's something they should consider too. You got to kind of pick your poison. When I opened up Sal's Restaurante, it was one town over from where I live. I used to frequent that restaurant, and I always joked with my wife, and I said, man, these folks definitely, they're nice people, but they don't know how to run a restaurant. The place is old and antiquated, and maybe it's a landlord issue because they don't own the building. They don't want to put money into it, but it's holding them back. Sure enough, that place goes out of business. They close the doors. After it was closed a couple of months, I stepped in, and I went in originally as a renter, later to buy the building. But when I tell you that the place was completely old and tired, we put $750,000 into that location. Okay. And it served me well for 12, 13 years. Don't get me wrong. But when I sold it for a fraction of what I invested in it. Now, people will say, well, you made money every year, Sal. That is 100% true and factual. But with that being said, I always say if I had to do it all over again, I would never put $750,000 of my money to make a place look beautiful. There are so many places out there that people already made that mistake and are selling it for pennies on the dollar. But you have to be experienced in what you're doing. When you're a first-time buyer, I caution people to do not go too big, do not go high in rents, do not go too many seats where the place looks empty, because social media, unfortunately, has really ruined the restaurant business. The mom and pop restaurant business has ruined it, because back in the day, we go back 25, 30 years, if you went to a mom and pop restaurant and you had a bad experience, who are you going to tell? Your neighbor, a relative? Now you get put on social media, Yelp, Google, whatever site you want to talk about. Next thing you know, 10,000 people are reading this review, 100,000 people. And that could be the difference between you surviving and not surviving. So it's better to be small, give more attentiveness by your staff, having the meals come out at the right temperature, within a reasonable amount of time. I mean, I have a couple of restaurants in my town here that I frequent, and there are nights it takes them an hour to get their entrees out. No one wants to sit there and wait an hour for their entree. It's just, there's a lot of factors that go into a first-time buyer of a restaurant. The other folks, like I said, I believe that a true restaurateur that's maybe looking for their second, third, fourth location, whatever it may be, they know everything that I'm talking about. It's the people who are green and people who have a dream and, have always wanted to do something. That's the folks that I caution, and I try and guide them as much as I can based on the information they provide. Now, some people, when you're dealing with them on a broker end, they're not very forthcoming, unfortunately. Whether they want to make themselves appear, to have deeper pockets than they do, or what experience they have. And I caution folks with that. When you're working with a broker, if you trust your broker, you have to be as transparent as possible with that person if you want to succeed. Okay, because I can only speak for myself and Ziggy. Okay, we are two guys that we're not looking to make the sale. We're looking for you to have your dreams come true and survive and give us referrals. And that's how we ultimately make money, right? By referrals and selling other businesses. If I put someone into a business that I know going in, they're going to fail, is someone ever going to call me back? They're not going to trust me. They're not going to call me back. So I always try and put the round into the round and the square into the square. When you try and jam something into something that doesn't make sense, it's not going to make sense, and those folks are going to fail, unfortunately.
Yeah, being a business broker, you're in essence their partner transitioning to the business. And you say being transparent, which, that's what you need to be so that you make it work. What would you say for a restaurant? Give some tips on maybe the menu or the type or
Yeah. So on the menu, again, I'll tell you my own personal experience. And luckily, I had somebody in my ear that talked me out of it, because my initial thought was to do a steakhouse with Italian cuisine as a spin-off from the steaks. And I had another close friend of mine who was in the business, and we were on a flight going somewhere. I don't know where we were going. We sat next to each other, and I was telling him, hey, I'm going to be retiring from the police department soon, and I'm going to open up my own restaurant, and I'm thinking of doing a steakhouse slash Italian, like an Italian steakhouse. And he said to me, Sal, listen to me very carefully. He goes, as a first time restaurateur, he goes, you have enough challenges ahead. You start putting high ticket items on your menu. If they don't sell and they spoil, your food cost is through the roof. So what does that mean? You should sell food that's not great? No, that's not what he was saying. What he was saying was to be creative with lower priced food. And what is that food? Well, it could be anything pork related, pork chops, pork loin, pastas, chickens, all that kind of stuff that's low risk, high reward, if you want to call it that. I found that in my own restaurant, I sold a ton of chicken, okay, ton of pasta. And those are the items that usually net you more money, okay? The overhead on those is a lot less. And if we talk about overhead, right? So when we talk about food cost overhead, there's also formulas there. There's loss leaders. So like I did have steaks on my menu and I had veal chops, but I would say 80% of my menu, if stuff went bad because it didn't sell, it hurt, but it didn't crush me. If you lose 10 veal chops or a dozen lobster tails because you just weren't moving them on your menu, I can assure you, you're going to feel that a lot worse. So when you're building a menu, two things that you should target, okay? Number one, do not overcomplicate a menu. Do not make a menu that you have to have 1,000 different products in your kitchen in order to achieve all those different items that you're trying to put out there. You want to be able to cross on different things that you pick. So chicken, I can make you 500 different chicken dishes that all taste differently, okay? Pastas, same thing. You add different proteins, different vegetables. Again, it's something that we're not stocking 5,000 different things in a restaurant. The more you have to stock, the more the chance of you wasting, okay? So I would tell you, streamline a menu, do a little something for everyone. We have to cater to a lot of people these days, okay? One of the things that my restaurant was known for was celiac, right? A lot of people were like, hey, Sal, I have celiac. Okay, that's great. No problem. We take care of that in the kitchen where we don't cross-contaminate. So my menu was probably 90%, okay, gluten-free, possible to make gluten-free. So that's one thing you have to cater to. The second thing you have to cater to is people who are vegans, right? People who are vegans, you can't just say, hey, well, go eat somewhere else. The difference between a restaurant that caters to those folks and not, this is how crazy the world is. You could lose a whole 10 folks coming in because one of them is gluten-free or one of them is a vegan or whatever you want to call it, okay, to have special needs, right? You lose a whole table of 10 because you refuse to enter that arena. And we didn't do that. We made sure that we catered to every single person. And if you're going to take the plunge, you have to take it seriously. No one ever got sick in my restaurant from cross-contamination. We trained in the kitchen. My chefs were aware. We used different pots when it came time to cook those items. And that's something you have to take into consideration too when you're building your menu. You have to make sure that there's something for everyone. Now, the last piece to the puzzle when it comes to building a menu. Do you want to make yourself family friendly, or you not want to be family friendly? There's no right or wrong answer here. It's just the menu you build, it falls completely back on what I'm saying about whether you want to be family oriented or not. If you're not going to have a children's menu and you're going to strictly go with a menu targeting adults, whether it's a casual night out, a date night, a high-end night, well, now your menu better reflect higher end stuff, because those folks want to see a wine menu that is, nice bottles of wine, whether it's Silver Oak or it's Jordan or Camus or things of that nature. They're going to want to see that. If you're more in a family friendly, where you're trying to capture the families, whether they do takeout from you or they dine in, well, now you can dumb your menu down a little bit, right? Mom and dad may want something a little fancier, and that's why you add, like I did, a veal chop or a ribeye, or I used to do short ribs and lobster tail, fruta de mare. You have to do certain high-end items, but I would tell you that probably 50 to 75% of your menu doesn't have to be high-end if you're going to target more of the family, because the families are coming there on a budget, okay? Everyone's got budgets, but when people are coming with their children, they're coming with a budget. It's as simple as that. I'll give you another example of you learn your lesson with yourself, right? When I opened up my restaurant originally, I had two partners, and we opened up as DiMaggio's Trattoria. When we opened up, you got charged for every soda you drank, okay? So what does that mean? Okay, so let's say, I don't remember exact numbers, but let's say when I first opened, it was $1.95 for a soda, okay? Now someone comes in with 2, 3 kids, family of 5, 3 children. These kids each have 2, 3 sodas each. You do the math yourself. 3 times 3 is 9. 9 times 2 is $18 in soda. Parents don't want to see that. They don't want to be spending, and that was 14 years ago when I opened. Now, I think when I left the restaurant, it was almost $3 a soda. But mine was, you pay once, drink as much soda as you want. There are certain things that you have to have common sense, I guess is the word, right? Some folks are like, well, the second soda I serve at the table, that's not free. I'm paying for that. You're right. But the first soda you served didn't cost you $3 either, right? If the soda cost you, again, hypothetical numbers, because I'm not sure what the prices are nowadays, but if a soda cost you between all the factors, the ice machine made, the glasses got to go through the dishwashing station, okay, and the syrup and the carbonated soda. Let's say it cost you 25, 30, 40 cents for a soda. You're charging $3. So you're making heavy money on that first soda, right? Let's use the number 50 cents, and you're charging 3. Okay, well, you're still up $2.50 on that soda. Even if they have 2 more sodas, you can't be banking it strictly on sales of soda. It's got to be the complete package. You want to see people ordering appetizers. You want to see people ordering dessert and coffee. The more friendly and inviting you make the setting, the more people will spend in your establishment. Are you going to come across, the people that are going to come in and say, hey, I'm going to do the special and drink water? Sure, those people exist. But more times than not, you're going to get people to come in that understand the restaurant process. What's the restaurant process? Again, for a new person coming in, it's in your best interest, if you want to succeed, to make sure a table orders at least 1 appetizer. Why? Are we trying to upsell people? No, that's not what we're trying to do. You have to understand that if you're a busy restaurant, your kitchen is trying to push out food in a reasonable time for a whole dining room. What's a reasonable time? Well, I'm sure that there's probably actual formulas out there, but I try and live and die by 45 minutes unless you want me to slow it down. There are some customers that say, hey, we're not in a hurry. We'll let you know when we want our meals. And we do that too. And that's a whole different process in the kitchen. But I always used to try and do 45 minutes from the time your order goes in for me dropping the meals at your table. So if you order 1 appetizer, table of 4, orders 1 fried calamari, again, I'm making it up, that buys the kitchen at least 15, 20 minutes, because the appetizer is going to go out anywhere in 5 to 7 minutes. They're going to sit there eating it. That may take another 10, 15 minutes. By the time you clear the table, guess what? Here's your entrees coming out. You didn't miss a beat, right? So you have to make yourself affordable. There were times when I was very, very busy in a restaurant and customers didn't want to order an appetizer. You know what I would do? I would send a free appetizer to the table. Why? Very simple. In the long run, that's helping me succeed in the kitchen because I'm giving you something to eat. You're not going to get cranky looking over your shoulder. Where's my food? What does it cost you for an appetizer? If an appetizer is on your menu for $15, let's say, even if it costs you $5, what you're saving in happiness of the customer, buying your kitchen time who's under fire, those folks may say, oh, what a nice owner. He sent us an app. Let's order dessert and coffee. So these are the tricks of the trade. These are the things that I always tell first timers when they say to me, hey, sometimes when you sell something, they say, can you give me some ideas? This is what I was thinking. And I try and instill in them what worked and didn't work for me. Now, do I have the perfect bullet? I don't know if I do or I don't. I can tell you that anybody who's seen my operation run knows that my costs were always kept down. My customers were happy because the food came out. Not only did it come out hot and tasting the way they wanted it to taste, but came out in a timely fashion. There's other restaurants in my town that probably do twice the amount of money I was doing. But you know what the difference is? You go in there and the whole restaurant looks like it's on fire. People are running around. Nobody's refilling water glasses. If you're a restaurant that gives bread, they're not bringing bread. They're not paying attention because they're frazzled, because they're trying to figure it out. So sometimes, like I said earlier, bigger and better is not as good as you starting out and creating a buzz that, hey, on Friday, Saturday, I can never get into your place. I know we're very busy. It's by reservation or whatever you decide. Okay. Why don't you come on a Monday or Tuesday or Wednesday or Thursday or Sunday? You're going to have a great dining experience because we're slower in those days, right? So what happens if enough people take that bait, okay, and say, hey, I'm not going to go on a Friday, Saturday because when I go to Sal's on Friday, Saturday, I can never get a seat. Now, all of a sudden, you may have created another Friday, Saturday during the week, which is another thing that helps restaurants make or break them. There are some restaurants out there right now, unfortunately, post-COVID, because of all the things that are going on in the world with people losing jobs or whatever is going on, the people that used to frequent restaurants 2-3 times a week, I used to have the same customers come in 2-3 times a week on different days. Now, all of a sudden, those restaurants are going out to eat once, or they're putting you in a rotation. Hey, you know what? I got 3 or 4 favorite restaurants. We can only afford to go out once a week. So that may mean that customer I was getting once, twice, 3 times a week, I may only see them once or twice the entire month now. So you have to make yourself, I don't know what word to use, but you have to make it so you're doing people in volume, not necessarily high ticket items, but a lot of people constantly flowing through. That does 2 things for you. Number one, it keeps your place looking busy all the time. So when a person walks in, they're not seeing a restaurant that has 100 seats and 60 of them are empty, and they're going, hey, what's going on here? Is this guy going out of business? All these things affect what happens in the restaurant business. Oh, I'm not going to buy a gift card to that place because I don't think they're doing that great. So there's a lot of factors that go in. So I believe in creating the allure and the buzz that why is it so hard to get into this place? And believe me, I will tell you that old saying, build it and they'll come. They will, as long as you give them great service, good tasting food at a fair price. Those folks will come out during the week because they're fascinated as to why you're so busy on the weekends.
Yeah, I think these are all great tips that minor things that can make a huge difference because
Absolutely.
you said not only does giving someone an appetizer help the kitchen, but they go away and say, I never order one, but he sends one over and they tell people. So, little things can really make a difference. Well, you know what I'd like you to talk about now is restaurant owners getting ready to sell. We work on marketing, and I know you had told me once about someone was trying to tell their restaurant, and you walked in, and it just didn't feel clean. And
Yep.
so maybe you could give some tips to the restaurant owners getting ready to sell.
Absolutely. So, You heard me reference earlier that I spent $750,000 with my two partners to build my restaurant. Day one that we opened in June of 2011, okay, my restaurant, when you compared it to every other restaurant, okay, within like 5 miles of where my place was, people were wowed. Look at this guy. He's got glass wall enclosure on his outdoor patio. He's got something called a jumbrella with built-in heaters that covers the outside. He's got a faux wall with the gold flakes inside of it. All these things that we did, yes, that's great. We built a high-end tablecloth Italian restaurant that also served steaks and things and stuff like that. That's all great. Cost us a lot of money. But here's one of the biggest mistakes people selling make. They'll say, oh, well, I spent $750,000 to build my place. I want to get 500,000-600,000. And I try to explain to these folks, that's not the way the industry works. Back in the day, and I'm going back probably 20 years ago, you were probably lucky you could get anywhere from 2 to 3 times the multiplier of what your true net is. That's another word, true net, right? The 2 words, true net. And people say, well, what does that mean? I go, well, if you're an owner operator, your true net doesn't include your salary, because anyone looking to buy the place, they have to replace your salary if you're an owner operator, right? So true net, if you're a hands-on operator, means what's left at the end of the year after you've paid everyone, all the expenses, and yourself. So let's say your true net is $100,000 for argument's sake. Okay, that's after you pay everything. There's 2 ways to market a restaurant that's owner operator. If the owner's taking $100,000 in salary throughout the year, then it's a play on words, right? But we're not masking it or hiding people. We're just explaining it to people. So there's 2 different nets, right? There's total owner compensation, and there's a true net. True net is, as I explained to you, after you've paid everything, including yourself, what's left December 31st, when you call your accountant, you say, hey, what did we net this year? If the number's 100,000, that restaurant's probably going to be listed for 2 times and maybe a little bit more than that. Okay. So maybe we list it at 230 for argument's sake, or 250, because you want to leave yourself a little playroom, right? No one wants to pay full price for anything. And I certainly don't want to pay full price either. So, anyone who thinks that, I'm going to list my restaurant and I want full price, that's not reality. Unless you have one of those, cat's meow restaurants that can't miss, bulletproof, run absentee, been a community gem for 40 years. Those are diamonds in the rough. They don't exist. So total owner compensation, what does that mean? Well, if I'm an owner and I pay myself $100,000 a year during the year to operate my restaurant, and then my net compensation is 100, now it's 200,000. Can we try and sell it for 400,000 plus? Listen, I tell everyone who goes to list a restaurant, it's your restaurant. I can only guide you, if you're serious about selling, of what's going to actually sell and what's not. Most people are not going to give you double total owner compensation. Maybe if you find an owner operator, he may say, hey, you know what? Let's split the difference. I'll pay 300,000 for that place, because they're going to take the 100,000 and cut it in half, right? And they're going to multiply that times 2. But even that just doesn't happen nowadays. It's just not the way it works, So I tell restaurateurs, there's things that we have to look at as brokers to give you our honest opinion of what we believe you can get. So 2 of the things I just mentioned, right? True net, total owner compensation. But unfortunately, these days, and it is sad, because basically folks are wasting their time, our time as brokers, and the buyer's times. Unless you find a buyer that's completely clueless and misguided by their broker, okay, everyone knows what to ask, what questions to ask, and everybody knows what to look for. When you tell someone, again, hypothetical numbers, I'm making $1 million gross a year, the first question, even if the guy buying the restaurant is not bright enough to figure it out, or the broker is not guiding him down the path, he's going to go to his accountant and he's going to go to his lawyer. He's going to say, hey, what should I be asking for here? And they're going to say what? They're going to say, we want to see 2 years or 3 years tax returns. We want to see POS, point of sales, right? For people that don't know what POS is, point of sale receipts that print out of the system. Now, what else do people say? The owner's selling is going to say, well, that doesn't show the full truth. That I don't list everything on there. Okay, that's great. I tell them that's fantastic. But who's buying a place that you tell me is $1 million and you're showing me receipts and tax returns reflecting $500,000? How could I possibly sell your restaurant indicating that it's making $1 million when you're only showing 500,000? Now, again, everybody who's in a restaurant business or any business that accepts cash understands that there's a cash portion to a restaurant or to whatever business you're buying, right? Every business still accepts cash, and there's at least 20% of that it can be reflected in cash. But even in that scenario, if you're telling me you're grossing $1 million, but I only see a POS system reflecting 500,000, even if I give you the benefit of the doubt as a broker, as a buyer, whoever's looking at these numbers, well, simple math. What's 20% of 500,000? It's 100,000, right? So that means you're only showing me $600,000 worth of sales. That's with me taking your word for it that 20% of that is in cash. So I always tell people who are gearing up to sell their restaurants, lying to me is like lying to your lawyer. Okay? If your lawyer is trying to fight you in court to get you off a case, that's not the guy you want to lie to. You want to tell him the truth, because telling him a lie is only going to waste everyone's time. I've had deals fall through. And why did they fall through? When we get to the stage of tax returns and things, well, everything that they tell you leading up to taking the listing doesn't reflect that in their tax returns. So now the folks that made an offer to buy the place, they're saying, hey, Sal, what are you doing? You showed me a place. You told me it's grossing $1 million. I said, well, that's what the owner is saying. This is what the owner is telling me. You have a chance. Usually people go into a location, vet it for a couple of weeks to see their own foot traffic, to see what kind of dollars and cents the places are making. But those numbers are skewed also, because like if you were buying a place right now, a restaurant, and I sat in a restaurant 2 weeks leading up to Christmas, you would think that I was the best restaurant in town because the doors are revolving like crazy right now. You have holiday parties, you have catering orders for Christmas. This is a busy month. In contrast, if you go sit in a restaurant in January, you're going to be like, you're lying to me, Sal. I sat there, this place is empty. But real restaurateurs know that January restaurants slow down, right? It's madness leading up to Christmas and New Year's and Hanukkah and all those holidays. And then all of a sudden you turn into January and it's like they roll up the sidewalks and nobody wants to spend money. Why? They start to see their credit card bills come in and they're like, oh my God, what did I do? I spent $10,000. Well, we can't go out to eat now, for a while. We'll have to cook dinner. So these are all things that I tell people that are selling their restaurants. You have to be forthcoming, right? If the number is 600,000, don't tell me it's $1 million, because all you're doing is wasting everybody's time. For every one dumb buyer that you find, there's 1,000 buyers who know what they're looking at, know what they're talking about, know what questions to ask. And if they don't, they're brokers, unless they're dishonest, they know to guide them to ask those questions, right? So to me, that's the first thing. Be forthcoming with what your actual numbers are. The second thing is, when you go to sell the restaurant, do not wait until you're defeated. When you go to sell your restaurant, if you are literally on your last breath, you can't take it anymore, I hate this place, I don't want to come into work, you've already lost. You've lost. You have to forecast when you want to stop working. And, like in my case, I was a chef owner, right? So I was in my kitchen. So it's magnified because you're in the kitchen all day long. But if you wait till you're completely frustrated or your business is completely down from where it was, you're not getting anything for your place. So you have to make the decision, as a conscious decision as a seller, to say, hey, you know what? I've had a great run here. I want to sell on a high. If you wait till you're frustrated and your sales are going down, I really can't help you get your top dollar at that point. And then the last thing, which is the biggest thing, and you touched on it earlier, you want me to sell your place and your place is filthy looking, people are going to walk in and walk out. People used to comment, my customers used to comment, your bathroom's so cleaner than the bathrooms in my own home. I had beautiful bathrooms, right? So when we built it, my wife got involved with certain things in the restaurant, and she helped out with the bathroom. So it was really fancy tiles, translucent tiles, and this and that, and the counters and the vanities and all these different things you put in there. It may sound bizarre what I'm going to say, but people judge restaurants based on their bathrooms also.
Mm-hmm.
So they look at the bathroom and they say, if the bathroom looks like this and that's in public view, what does the kitchen look like? Right.
Right.
So one of the things I did in my restaurant, I did an open concept where you could look into my kitchen. So customers used to say to me, no matter what day we look through that kitchen opening, it could be your busiest day, your slowest days. You could eat off the floors. All the equipment shiny looking. It's not covered in grease and disgusting. I would tell you, when you're ready to sell, your place should not smell. Your equipment should not be covered in grease. Your floor should not have gum stuck to them or underneath the tables. Unfortunately, there's a lot of kids, even some adults, they don't want to get rid of their gum. They take it out of their mouth, they stick it under a table. It happens. It's the industry. You have to make sure you're dusting. You have to make sure you're keeping, the place has got to smell good. Air conditioning vents that look black. People see this kind of stuff. And the way you project yourself is the way that's reflective of what they think of your establishment. So these are all things I tell people when I go and I take a list and go, hey, do me a favor. Get your people to clean the kitchen. I was walking through the kitchen and I was literally sticking to the floor. When you're sticking to the floor, it sends a bad message. That means your people aren't doing the right thing, right? That means your equipment is not maintained. That means that when I come in there, I'm going to have to either change the equipment or spend a week just in completely, ripping a place apart to clean it because you haven't cleaned. So maintenance goes a long way for when you're trying to sell your place.
I totally agree. The things that you notice, and even the bathrooms, if you're out at a restaurant, you want to go in and have it be clean because it reflects the overall cleanliness of everything. What would you say would be one thing person getting ready to buy and is just trying to get all their ducks in order? You've outlined numbers, but do you start with numbers? Do you get an attorney? I mean, you should obviously get a business broker. So do you help them get a team together? What do you think about that?
So the progression of what I tell people, especially when they're green and they're newbies to the business, is this. I ask them, what's your financial capabilities, right? And again, they have to be forthcoming. If they're going to lie to me thinking they're impressed me, I'm not impressed. You could be worth 10 billion, you could be worth $10. It doesn't matter to me. I'm going to help you either way. It's just that in order for me to be successful, you have to give me the tools, the right tools, not just hand me. I ask you for a screwdriver and you hand me a hammer, right? So what does that mean? Well, I ask pointed questions. Number one, what is your financial capability? Are you going to need the owner to hold a note? Have you ever done this before? Do you have a chef in mind? Are you the chef? These are all questions that I ask. And why do I ask all these questions? Because if we don't know that, we're basically setting you up to fail, is what we're doing, right? So a lot of places, it's funny because I don't know what other brokers do in other companies, but I know, again, I reference Ziggy all the time. Ziggy's been in this business a lot longer than I have been. But I'm an honest guy. And if it's not for you, I'm going to tell you it's not for you. It's not about me making a sale. I don't operate that way. I remember when I first started out, I needed guidance too. And had I been guided by the wrong people, I could have lost everything I worked for the previous 20 years as a cop, right? So you need honest people, finding an honest broker, finding a broker that's going to tell you the real deal of what it is and what it isn't. You sending me a message through our site saying that you're interested in this restaurant and the restaurant is being sold, let's say $695,000. And I call you up and I go, what's your financial capability? And you tell me, well, I have 200,000 put down. I want them to hold a note. You're spinning your wheels because no restaurateur is going to give you the keys to their successful restaurant, because at that number, it's a successful restaurant. And with a dream that you're all of a sudden going to be able to come up with $500,000 in payments over 5 years, in addition to paying your rent, your employees, and everything else, because they know what they've made at the restaurant, right? So they know, even if you operate exactly the way they operated, they know that what are you really going to be able to make if you're paying me $500,000 in a note that I'm holding for you? So I tell people, you have to have your numbers of what you can afford, the max you can afford, without compromising an account that has at least 6 months worth of rent, that you're not reliant on profits. God willing, you have the recipe for great food and, great service and a great location, and the people come and you're able to recoup your money right away. The reality is there's far and few in between that recoup their money. That used to be something, like I said, 15, 20 years ago. If you bought a restaurant, typically year and a half, 2 years max, you would recoup every penny that you spent to buy the restaurant, you would recoup it. Nowadays, it probably takes twice as long. But does that make it bad? No, it doesn't make it bad. It makes your commitment to it as an owner operator a lot more. Now, if you're an investor, investors only care about one thing. Is the place making the money that they're advertising? Yes, it is. Okay. Is the place run absentee, or is it run with an owner operator? It's run with an owner operator. Okay. What is that owner operator making? 75,000. Well, it's going to cost us that to drop a manager in a place. So that's when that true net number comes in, because they have no desire to go work the location. What they want to do is they want to put people like me running their location, saying, "Hey, I know you're a chef. I know you've been a bartender. Hey, I know you know how to do all this stuff. We want you to be our point man. We're going to give you $75,000 a year as a general manager plus bonuses," right? But those are the folks that look at the true net numbers, because they don't want no part of them picking up a utensil, them serving anybody, making a drink. They don't want to do any of that stuff.
Okay, well, I there's a lot to think about, and that's why I think getting a good business broker is essential in today's modern, not only restaurant business, but business world in general, because the complexity, it isn't like, oh, I've got a dream and I can make it. Oh, look at, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's,
Yeah.
I think that's essential. So, and I know I work on marketing with you and Ziggy and Biz Brokerage Hub, and we try and keep up and use the most advanced techniques for marketing and hitting social and doing everything. And it's fascinating how things evolve, just the complexity of marketing. It isn't like you put up a sign
Yeah.
or take out an ad. I mean, to really find some of the businesses that are there. So I think definitely working with a business broker. We'll put up links to everything, the website, how to contact, some of the social sites that you're on to get a sense. Um, I know you do referrals for, you want to talk a little bit about how someone could refer someone to you if they know.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So, I post every once in a while, primarily on Facebook, which I guess it shows my age. I'm going to be 60 years old. So I guess, if I know Facebook's outdated for the younger generation, they're more into TikTok and Instagram and all this other stuff. And I don't dabble that much. I don't have TikTok at all. But the bottom line is I try and put it out there on Facebook. And really, what am I telling people? It's friends of mine and friends of friends. And I tell them, hey, look, no business, regardless of what it is. It doesn't have to be a restaurant. We have whatever knowledge I have. If I don't have the knowledge in that specific thing that you want me to sell, Ziggy's been around the block a long time. Me and Ziggy work very closely together, and between the two of us, we can definitely come up with a formula that fits your needs. But I tell everyone, no business is too small or too big. It doesn't matter, and it costs you nothing to speak to me, right? So the reality is, if you're thinking about selling your business and you just want guidance, like what we've been chatting about for the last half hour or so, I'm more than happy to give you the guidance. I don't charge. I'm not a lawyer or a CPA that charges by the hour here. I'm more than happy to help you. Okay. And hopefully the questions that you ask and the answers I give you will help you make decisions as to whether you can sell your business, you can't sell your business, it's worthless, it's worth a ton. I can do all of it. Sometimes you have to be receptive to what comes out of a broker's mouth, right? If you're going to fight the broker and say, I don't care, I'm only making 75,000 true net, but I want to sell it for 500,000. Listen, some brokers will take that listing, and you know what will happen? You won't hear from them because no one's going to inquire about that listing, right? We know that. You do the marketing, Mildred, so you know. If we overprice something or it's not priced right or the numbers don't jive, you don't get any action on anything because, again, someone who knows what they're doing looks. When I was looking for a restaurant myself, I dealt with another broker also, Ziggy, and a different broker who was a friend of mine for many years. And he would call me sometimes and he would send me restaurants. And I'd say to him, "Hey, Michael," I go, "What are you doing?" He goes, "What do you mean?" I go, "Have you looked at these numbers?" He goes, "I know they don't make sense." I go, "Exactly. So why are you wasting your time?" I go, "You're sending me something. You tell me it's making X when it's not even close to making X. And he goes, "I know." He goes, "I've tried to talk to the seller, but this is what they're insisting on." And what I would tell folks that with referrals and things of that nature is, talk to your people and explain to them that they have to be transparent with their brokers. If it's me, Ziggy, someone else, different brokerage, whatever you decide to do, but be transparent. Treat that person like he's a lawyer and you're being tried in a criminal case, because they're going to give you guidance as to what your place truly is worth. And you should be able to, just from that free consultation, if you want to call it that, okay, you should be able to know right away from the feeling you get whether that person's the right broker for you or not, right? There's some brokers out there that you could hear just from the way they're talking that they don't have your best interest at hand. What they want to do is they want to sell your place and make the commission. That's not how we operate here. We want the seller to leave happy and we want the buyer to leave happy, because the only way for us to continue to get referrals is by word of mouth, right? You can do all the advertising in the world. The bottom line is it's just like when you're looking for a house. There's a million realtors out there, right? How do you know which one is for you? Well, typically, if you post, let's say on Facebook, okay, and you say, "Hey, can anyone refer a business broker, or can anyone refer an attorney or a CPA or whatever it is?" And 50 people respond and 25 of them say the same name. Well, there you go. There's your word of mouth, right? That's your advertising.
Right.
So I would tell folks that, if you know someone looking for a business and the broker yourself personally, like anybody who's my friend or anybody who watches this that likes what I've had to say, it costs you nothing to have a conversation with me. So I would say reach out, myself, Ziggy, and we will definitely steer you in the right direction.
Great. Well, thank you so much, Sal. We have a lot of fun, I think, working
Absolutely.
on doing these properties and trying to figure out. I get to be creative.
You certainly are. You are.
We try different things. I try and see what trends, and then we'll try something and see what works. Or every once in a while, I'll go, "Oh, I really like how
Yep.
that came
Yep.
out." And then I did one the other day that I really didn't like how it came out. But that's what you trial and error to a certain point. But we get to be creative. So,
Yeah, I've started to not write a book. I don't think I want to call it a book, but I've started to put a lot of the thoughts that we've talked about down on paper. And at some point, and I've had this conversation with you, and I would involve you in some point, and maybe we can get something out there that truly is, restaurant buying for dummies 101. And I was a dummy. I could tell you straight up. When I bought my first restaurant, I was a dummy. I didn't know anything. And when I don't mean it in an insulting way, I mean it's novice to what I'm about to step into. And it's a scary world, especially when you saved up your money for so many years and now you're going to throw it all at something that you read everywhere that most restaurants fail in 12 months. Landlords are terrible. You see all of this stuff. So it's a very scary world. And I can tell you right now that having a broker that knows what they're talking about, knows the ins and outs of the businesses that you're looking at, and will guide you down the path and not just look to make a commission, those are the people you want to associate with.
right. I mean, the structure you've talked about, from not only the numbers about the actual building, but structuring the menu and doing all that, the concept. You might be someone who's a chef and wants to cook, but you never thought of all those other things. It's not
That's
your
a lot.
area of expertise.
Yep,
So,
they know the back of the house, but they don't know the front of the house, and
right.
they're both equally as important, right? It's important, just like I always say, it's important to have the right staff. Some people, when they pick their staff members, they don't really watch and train them the right way. They kind of just throw them feet to the fire, and that's how you create a bad environment. Because what happens is if everyone's not on the same page, when they're talking about, I remember when I first opened up, just to tell you a quick story, when I first opened up the restaurant, I had a lot of kids that worked for me. I always had a lot of young kids that worked for me. And I had a couple of girls, they were in college, that worked for me. One could memorize everything that, if whatever I said, she could repeat it verbatim. 2 seconds later, an hour later, it didn't matter. And then I had others that wanted to ad lib. And one time I was listening to one of the girls describe one of my salads at one of the booths in my restaurant. And the woman asked her, well, what does the mesclun salad have in it? She starts to describe it, and she gets half the ingredients wrong that are in the salad. She said sliced eggs. There was no eggs in it, all this stuff. I don't even know where she came up with this stuff. So I immediately, intervened and said, hey, hi, I'm the owner. I said, this young lady's training with us. She's new. I want to give you a more accurate description of that salad. And then afterwards, later, I would say to her, I go, where'd you come up with that? Oh, well, I wasn't sure. So I just decided. I go, yeah, but here's the problem. Now you put the salad in front of her. You told her it has sliced hard-boiled eggs inside of it. What do you think she's going to ask you for? Where's my sliced hard-boiled eggs? I go, then what am I supposed to do? You stop the kitchen to stop boiling eggs? So again, training, in a perfect world, a new restaurant buyer, first-time buyer, never been in a business, you want to have a plan in place 6 months prior between the menu, the financing, whatever you're going to do, maybe even key personnel for when you finally turn the key to that door. And the key spots to me, the 3 key spots to any restaurant: your kitchen, more importantly, head chef, okay? Your head bartender, and whoever's going to be the general manager in front. If it's you as an owner operator, remember, I started out in the front of the house. I wound up in my kitchen because I had lost one of my chefs who moved back to his country. And I never made it back out of the kitchen. Why? Every time I tried to hire another chef, he wasn't the right fit. And I wasn't going to put somebody behind the line reflecting me and my cuisine and how I want it to go out and what I want the plate to look like. I wasn't going to pay someone to undermine me. So in the long run, I surrendered. I said, I'm going to be in the kitchen. It was me and my head chef in the kitchen. And my wife and kids, they knew the message I wanted to deliver in the front of the house. And they were my eyes, ears, and they delivered the message in the front of the house. And that's why it was so accommodating to everyone, because you got treated like family. If you don't have all this structure in place before you unlock the door, and even your menu, when you build a menu, you don't just say, hey, here's the menu, here's a piece of paper, this is my menu. No, your chefs have to execute it. Your chefs have to cook it. You have to sit there. You have to eat it with a team of people. What do you like? What don't you like? What's it missing? It's all trial and error, because you only get one shot at opening night. The way you open and the way you treat people and the food and the service, when you first open, that first night leading up to, let's say, the first 30 days, that's going to define you as to what kind of restaurant you are. Oh, they don't have their act together. Oh, it was phenomenal from start to finish. They greeted me. They sat me. Warm bread came to the table. They immediately filled our water glasses. I dropped my fork. They immediately picked up the fork, brought me another fork. These are all things that your first impression may be your last impression.
That's great advice. I think that's a good way to end. So, thank you so much. It's always a pleasure. And we'll have links for you and Biz Brokerage and Ziggy and all the social places that people can sign up. We try and we have a blog post where we talk about how catering can add to your business, and car washes, the advantages, and different topics, owner financing, the benefits, build outs, so people can get a sense while they're starting to plan to either buy or sell. So thank you so much.
Thank you, Mildred. Always a pleasure.
Okay, bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.